there's just the level of tension, the level of anxiety that is out there because people see this election as such a sort of apocalyptic, potentially democracy-ending clash.
Just a week now until Americans head to the polls to vote for their new president. Now, there was a joke, if you can call it that. I'm not sure many people really would. It was made by a comedian at Donald Trump's rally in Madison Square Gardens in New York City at the weekend, and it caused quite a backlash from Democrats, from Republicans, and some of Trump's own team.
It is absolutely wild times. It really, really is. And, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
And some of this comedian's cracks aimed at the Latino community were even lewder than that. Later on, Donald Trump, he doubled down on the issue of immigration and made this pledge.
And I'm hereby calling for the death penalty for any migrant that kills an American citizen or a law enforcement officer. Under Kamala, America is a sanctuary for criminals and for illegal aliens that are in our country illegally. I will immediately ban all sanctuary cities in the United States.
Well, Elon Musk was there. He was enthusiastic.
America's just not just going to be great. America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing!
Well, Kamala Harris, she criticized the rally as divisive.
I think last night Donald Trump's event in Madison Square Garden really highlighted a point that I've been making throughout this campaign. He is focused and actually fixated on his grievances, on himself, and on dividing our country.
Let's talk to Molly Ball, senior political correspondent at the Wall Street Journal. Hello to you, Molly. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, John. Great to be back with you.
Hi. So, look, first of all, this rally, Molly, I mean, it just seems so bizarre to me to have a turn on the platform. And he wasn't the only speaker who risked causing offence, and that included offence to some key demographics of voters. What sense did it make?
Well, I don't know where you've been for the last 10 years, but Trump rallies frequently feature, speakers who have various offensive and or divisive things to say. Now, obviously, this was of a different degree, and some speakers in particular. But frankly, the rallies frequently do feature a lot of people saying a lot of things that we would not generally have in the sort of more polite corridors of traditional politics. And that was certainly the case with this last night. Some quite racist and misogynist and extreme things being said by speakers other than Trump. And the campaign wanted this to be a big splash of an event, wanted it to be a big attention-getting media spectacle.
Yes.
He's not in a swing state, so the point of a rally like this is for everybody to be watching it from everywhere. And the question that a lot of Republicans now have is, did he shoot himself in the foot, so to speak, by doing that? Because he certainly got a lot of attention, but not necessarily in a positive way.
No, he certainly got a lot of attention. I see that Nate Silver, the poll watcher, the election watcher, he's saying that this rally, it's generated more traffic on Google than anything since the Pennsylvania assassination attempt on Trump. You would normally think this is going to redound badly to the disadvantage of Donald Trump in the opinion polls, but then, you wouldn't bet your life on that at all, would you?
It's 1 week until the election. It's crazy times, and we don't know which way any of this is going to go. And it's a very close race, and it's tied nationally and in the swing states. And the best way to find out how the election is going to turn out is just to wait a few days. But all that being said, look, there has been a feeling on the part of Kamala Harris and her allies that the more people see of Trump, the less they like him. And a lot of what they have been trying to do is simply to put Trump's divisive divisive and controversial rhetoric in front of as many voters as possible. There's a feeling that there are a lot of voters out there who may be saying, oh, things weren't so bad when he was president last time. And if they can just be forced to confront what it's actually like for him to, be in your face every day and be in power, that they might have second thoughts. So certainly the Harris campaign feels that the more Trump is himself, and the more Trump is sort of allowed to be his full self and get as much attention as possible, the better that is for her campaign. And so they wouldn't mind him doing a bunch more of these Madison Square Garden rallies from now until the election.
I was talking to our colleague Jackie Goddard a little earlier on, asking about these fears in the air of disorder and violence, maybe serious violence around this election. She is genuinely worried. Tell me, Molly, what are your thoughts? Are you really worried?
Absolutely. I think, and we have tested this in our poll, and I've seen a lot of other polls as well. There are a large number of Americans fear violence in the aftermath of the election. I mean, 4 years ago was the first time in American history that there was not a peaceful transfer of power. So there's reason to be concerned. And then there's just the level of tension, the level of anxiety that is out there because people see this election as such a sort of apocalyptic, potentially democracy-ending clash. I've spoken to so many voters, both at political events and just going about their business, and there's really a widespread feeling that this is not a normal election, that this is a sort of turning point in history, and that it's a sort of much more momentous for that reason. So people are on edge, and voting centers have called in extra security in a lot of the places that we expect to be spending a long time counting votes after the polls close. They've got snipers on the roofs, they've got panic buttons for the poll workers. There really has been an attempt to secure and fortify all of those pressure points because there are so many angry people out there, and we just don't know what could happen.
Okay, a turning point in history. Molly Ball at the Wall Street Journal, thank you as always. Now, I spoke just a short while ago to Maria Hinojosa, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, anchor of Latino USA, and I asked her first if the comments at that rally in New York City amounted to a serious political blunder.
I mean, I would say yes. If you're aiming to get Latinos and Latinas to feel endeared to you and therefore to give you their vote, I don't think it was a smart call to let this so-called comedian get up there and say, they were so horrific, these jokes. And I'm not a prude. And I love to tell jokes and I love to laugh, and not all jokes are appropriate all the time. But this is a Madison Square Garden rally in New York City, in a city that is, you can't walk 2 steps without being with somebody who is not a white male. And so just the thought of this kind of vitriol, as I woke up this morning and I started kind of hearing again everything that was said, I just said, I hate it when people say, you think it can't get any worse, and then it gets worse. And I was like, I really didn't know how much worse it could get. And I guess the takeaway is it will get worse. It will continue to get worse. And that's what we live in the United States of America today.
But this was, at the weekend, a political rally. And the purpose of a political rally, one would think, is to attract voters and not repel them, which begs the question, what on earth was this comedian thinking, Maria, do you think?
Well, I don't want to get into the mind of a white male privileged dude. I don't want to get in his head. It's just horrific the way he spoke about Mexicans, immigrants, Puerto Ricans who are, as you know, are born American citizens. So when he says there is an island of trash and garbage, he's talking about his fellow American citizens, even though he can't see that. Puerto Ricans are a very important voting bloc. They've been hard to, I think at the very beginning when we saw mass migration after Hurricane Maria, there was a sense that the Puerto Rican voter would be necessarily more progressive. That hasn't necessarily turned out to be true in Central Florida, which is a really important part of that state. But after you hear something like this, the question is, if you are Puerto Rican, can you actually go into that poll, into that booth alone when no one is around and pull the lever for Donald Trump? Even if you said that you were, even if you said that you believe in him, can you actually do it? Can you be a descendant of a Mexican immigrant or a Mexican immigrant like myself, who is now a U.S. citizen? Can you actually go in there and pull the lever after hearing these things so close to the election? That's my question. That's really what I'm sitting with. And obviously we don't know the answer. And it may not be what I had hoped, right? Which is that people will see insults and take them as insults.
Okay, clearly your answer to can the Latino Americans support Donald Trump, especially after this, but could they support Donald Trump? Your answer is no. And yet it's true, isn't it, that maybe a significant minority of Latin American voters are prepared to support Donald Trump. That is so, isn't it? And if it is so, why do you think that is?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying, I don't know how comfortable you can be if you are a Donald Trump supporter to go in and pull the lever. But will there be a larger number than, I don't know what is to be expected, right? It's so hard to judge elections, but there are many Latinos and Latinas, close to 30%, sometimes more, sometimes less, who are planning on voting for Donald Trump and who support him.
Yes.
And the question is, will they actually be hearing what Donald Trump said? Will they actually be fed that? For example, there's just so much. I just finished a documentary about mis and disinformation aimed at Latinos in Spanish. And it's unclear whether or not through their channels they'll even know what Donald Trump was saying, or they'll actually only hear the Trump campaign saying, oh, we didn't really vet what the comedian was going to say, so that's on us. We're, sorry about that. But no, why are they voting for Donald Trump? It's so complex. It's incredibly complex. I think all of us are witnessing the power of propaganda, frankly. No one in this country likes to talk that way. It makes me uncomfortable. But I think we have to say what we've seen right over the last 4 years, and certainly in the last 2 years, and intensifying over the last year. The rhetoric against Latino immigrants and refugees has been relentless. And so what you do is you separate yourselves from that group and say, that's not me. I'm going to be over here with the ones who are looking at the mass of immigrants who are coming here, et cetera, buying into that and saying, I'm with this guy. So, but it's so complex. We'd have to do a whole hour at least.
If you're right, and it comes down to what you describe as the propaganda message, what are the messages that are resonating with those Latin American voters? What is working? What is making them want to support Donald Trump? Just boil that down for me.
Right. Well, so one of the most important issues is the economy. And the Trump campaign has really seized on this. With this, the economy in the United States is good. Actually, inflation is down. The economy is growing. But the mis and disinformation that is coming at Latino and Latina voters is telling them that the economy is terrible. Yes, there has been inflation, but in fact, the economy in the United States is stable and growing. So the Democrats have not really been able to fine-tune the message. I mean, Kamala Harris is talking a lot about her economic agenda now, but it needed to be, again, relentless in response to the relentless talk about Donald Trump as a savvy businessman, as somebody that is going to save the American economy, even though the economy is not in the tubes. This is something that has really played for Trump, for sure.
Okay, inflation in America, it is getting back to something that we would normally call normal, but it has been very, very high in recent memory, and that is a thing which is going to count against an incumbent, or in this case, against the person who was the vice president to the incumbent. That is normal politics, I guess, isn't it?
Absolutely, but then, if you're experienced in normal politics, then the Democrats again should have had a stronger fight in them. If all they needed to do was to kind of tout their record and make good slogans and memes. I mean, of course, the Obama said, when they go low, we go higher. But at a certain point, especially in a time when there is so much mis and disinformation in social media, you've got to match that. The Democrats have, a year ago, I interviewed Vice President Kamala Harris. I sat down with her, and that was one of the questions that came up. Why is it that the Democrats have such a hard time touting their successes about what they've done? And she said, I know, we don't do such a good job. Well, it could cost them election. It could cost them this election. And honestly, that's not knowing how to do politics. That's being ill-prepared.
Well, that's very blunt. You fear this could cost the Democrats and Kamala Harris the election. I mean, what will be the effects in those crucial swing states? Florida, of course, we know there's a substantial Latino part of the population there. What about the other swing states?
Well, people don't realize this because they are so used to just hearing the fear-mongering about Latino and Latina immigrants like myself, that people fail to realize that if they just open their eyes, Latinos and Latinas are everywhere. So that means we are in every single swing state. Most notably, for example, in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is hugely important, and the numbers of the Latino population may be small, but when you're talking about a swing state and where thousands of votes make a difference, they are the swing within the swing. I would say the same thing goes for even a place like Georgia. It's a small number, but it can be the swing within that swing that builds upon the swing of, let's say, Black voters. In Arizona, I would have thought that at this point, Arizona would not be a swing state, that it would be solidly in the blues territory. But because of the anti-immigrant impact, right, you would think that Arizona, with a large Latino population, would swing blue. The other thing that's happened for Latino and Latina voters that we haven't touched on is that increasingly there is a turn towards religion, and that means a turn towards evangelicals. And in the evangelical church, anti-abortion is one of the guiding principles. Even though they talk about being pro-immigrant, I've heard several voters who say, when I go into the voting booth, am I siding with my undocumented brothers and sisters against mass deportation, or am I protecting the unborn? And that's a real conversation that is bringing out Latino voters both for the Democrats as well as for the Republicans.
Okay, so the cost of living could be counting against the Democrats with Latino voters, and as you say, the question of abortion could be counting. That is interesting.
Well, I think the abortion question is complex, but it's probably going to swing more towards the Democrats in this sense, simply because Donald Trump has been so.
But it's a nuanced question, and when it comes to the border, that could also be costing the Democrats votes among Latinos. That's true, isn't it?
Yes, I have to say, in my reporting, 8 years ago, when Donald Trump first ran, you would be hard pressed to find Latinos and Latinas talking positively about Donald Trump or repeating his rhetoric about who was crossing the border and the caravans, etc., in a fear hysteria that we already lived through. I have found several Latino and Latina voters in my reporting who say that they want to vote for Donald Trump. And so obviously this is like, Donald Trump only wins because he's got a majority of white voters. Let's just be clear about that. And that in and of itself is a problem for the United States, that you have just under half of the country that believes that outward racism and white supremacy and attacking of immigrants is part of the American reality. Nonetheless, you do have a dynamic where, immigrants do also understand the human cost of what has happened. Again, that's why I'm like, will they go in and pull the lever for Donald Trump, knowing that mass deportation will more than likely affect their own loved ones? That's what we don't know, right? There's not enough, strategic polling about Latino and Latina voters. So we're still at a loss in terms of what might happen with the vote.
Maria Enos, the anchor of Latino USA.